R&AW chief Samant Goel's whirlwind trip to Nepal has created quite a stir in the neighboring country. It has led to a lot of political questions being raised against Prime Minister K.P. In fact, he's already been in the eye of storm, even as far as his own party, his own alliance is concerned. But more importantly, what was the purpose of this visit? Why did India feel the need to organize a visit like this? Nayanima Basu, who tracks diplomacy for ThePrint, is going to try and answer these questions for me. You also please send in your questions. She'll be happy to answer them in government matters. So Nayanima, how was this trip decided? How did it suddenly materialize?
So Ruhi, as you're aware, and as I had written in my story day before, is that this was a rush trip, and it was decided. I mean, it was not that as if it was decided for a long time. It's been, although it's been contemplated, because this is not his first visit after all. He had gone last year immediately after taking over, as the R&AW chief. However, the thing is, at this point, there is a lot of tension going on between India and China, as you are aware, with the new map and with their claiming of territories that India regards as its own. While those talks are still pending and India has said that it will do the kind of discussion, there is this concern of the growing Chinese influence there and how China is sort of, mixing itself, interfering within the internal politics of Nepal. Also because of the fact that the two senior leaders of the ruling party of the Nepal Communist Party, they are squabbling with each other for a power sharing deal.
Right. So, Nayanima, as you rightly mentioned, India and Nepal have had a tense few months over boundary disputes. But, was this visit in any way an attempt to sort of quell the tensions, to ease out differences?
Well, for India, it is always helpful to have a stable Nepal, and that's what India has always, be it the Modi government or be it any previous government, is what something India has always hoped for. However, we've seen that, under Prime Minister Oli and also how tensions have sort of between India and Nepal they have constantly increased, because firstly, when in the first tenure of Prime Minister Oli, there was this Madhesi tension that started. Right. There was a border blockade for which Nepal blames India. India refused it, but it was a very distressing time for Nepal, because India had stopped even giving essential items, foods and medicines to Nepal. So that has not really gone down well with Nepal, and also with the young crowd there, who do not really know the kind of historical friendship and the treaty of friendship that these two countries has. So that's one. But then when Prime Minister Oli came back, there was a lot of hope that again the bonhomie between Prime Minister Oli and Prime Minister Modi will begin, and it was sort of building up. We saw during COVID, when the COVID lockdown started and all of that in the month of March, Prime Minister called a SARC meeting where Prime Minister Oli participated. He even contributed in the SARC COVID fund. However, since then things have gone downhill, with the Defense Minister inaugurating a new road. So all those things have happened, and then they suddenly went ahead and claimed this 335 square kilometers as their own, issued a new political map, and even gone to the extent of amending their constitution for this. So things, and within that, as all these things were unfolding, the Chinese ambassador there, there are reports within Nepali media also and otherwise that how she's been trying to unite these two leaders, Prime Minister Oli and Pushpa Dahal, Prachanda, how he is known as popularly. So there was this understanding that these two leaders, they will be sharing the power, right, when these two factions came together. So there was this understanding initially that Prime Minister Oli will be the Prime Minister for a few years, after which probably Prachanda will come over. But I think that's not been happening, and Prime Minister Oli has been trying to do a lot of things while he is on the hot seat. And that has really not gone down well. So this tensions happening. Nepal it has just got a new constitution. So India was looking forward to a more stable Nepal.
Right. All right. Okay. So let's take Anoop's question. Is the Indian government brokering a deal between the two factions, or is it a push to hand over the reins to Mr. Prachand? Anyhow, will this lead to a better relationship with India? And the second question is also related. It says, why is our government interfering in the domestic politics of Nepal? Now, that has always been an allegation that Nepalis have leveled against India of interfering in their domestic politics. Is that also what is happening? Did the Raw Chief's visit have something to do with trying to broker peace between Prachand and Mr. Oli?
Well, I would not really say that, because after all, Nepal is this special country for India, with whom you have open borders, free movement of people. Today's times are different because of COVID and all, some unprecedented things have taken place. The borders are still sort of shut down, but so Nepal has been this very special country for India. They have, they share a very special relationship. However, we need to also understand that Nepal has its own identity that it wants to assert itself. Gone are the days when India can say that no, Nepal is this sort of we are the big brother and they're the small brother. So they want to come out of that, firstly. Secondly, in terms of interference, I would say it has come naturally for India to understand what is happening with that country, because remember, we don't really have very many friendly neighbors. End of the day, for India, Pakistan has always been a concern, China has been a concern, and those concerns have only grown over the years. So India has always been more watchful of what's happening in Nepal, also because of the fact that things have changed, how politics have changed there with a new constitution, and the fact that India and Nepal, they have cultural linkages and people-to-people linkages,
the
right?
Roti Beti Ka Rishta.
Roti Beti Rishta, exactly. So now the thing is, if you talk about events, I mean, in this visit, we've seen how Prime Minister, there are reports in the Nepali media that Prime Minister Oli had a special dinner reception for the Raw Chief, Mr. Goel. So clearly, they are not, the Nepal government is not seeing it as an interference. It remains to be seen how the population in Nepali citizens look at it. But that has always been India's way of dealing with Nepal, to understand the situation first and not do anything. I mean, this is not really interference. I mean, you have a neighbor who's very close to you. So you try to understand and assess what is going wrong there.
Right. In fact, in all fairness, I think political parties in Nepal have also always sought India's advice, yes. India's mediation in matters which are difficult.
Right.
So it's been more of a relationship like that than of imposition
Absolutely.
and interference. Okay, there's this question from Tarush. Is India trying for a regime change in Nepal? So there has been this concern about Oli's very overt proximity with China. Prachand, in a way, is closer to India than Oli is. So is there a framework in the Indian establishment to make Prachand ahead?
Well, we've heard Prime Minister Oli a few months back, and he says things like New Delhi is trying to change the situation. And I don't say that, at least the Prime Minister. Now, whether India wants Prachand there or not, see, for India, the interest has always been to have a stable Nepal with whom one can do business from every aspect. And under the Modi government, we've seen how every country is being viewed also as a strategic partner and not just purely business or, neighboring countries. So that is definitely another thing. But to push Prachand to be there, I don't think India will go to that extent. Yes, there could be some kind of back channel diplomacy. There can be, all this kind of efforts. But end of the day, this call has to be taken by Nepal. And we've seen how these two leaders, they have been fighting amongst each other. Let's not forget, there's a very prominent opposition party, the Nepal Congress Party, which has been also very close to India. And so India has its sort of contacts within Nepal for obvious reasons. So whether or not it wants Prachand to be there, that's a call, yes. I mean, for India, whoever is there, they want a stable Nepal, end of the day. Prachand for himself, he's also wanting his, share of power. So that's the dynamics that has to be worked out within themselves.
Right. Yashdeep, is the Chinese ambassador in Nepal still interfering in its bilateral ties with other countries? Present R&AW chief visit controversy points towards it. So, the Chinese ambassador in Nepal is known to be very active, practices a lot of soft diplomacy to push for China's influence on Nepal. So let me just flip the question a little bit. Is there a concern about that in the Indian establishment?
Yes, so within the Indian establishment, that concern is there not just with Nepal but also with Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and because as China is yielding their influence in all these countries, not just through political interference but also through the kind of initiatives like the Belt and Road Project and basically the economic initiatives. And China can afford to do that because of the deep pockets that they have. So that has always been India's concern, and yes, it is a concern more so now because India is now looking towards aligning more towards the US with Indo-Pacific and other things. So yes, that is, and which is why we are seeing this time when US Secretary of State is here, he will be visiting some of the neighboring countries like Sri Lanka and all. So coming back to the question, yes, the Chinese ambassador there this time, she's very active and she's just doing her job. And there's been a lot of I would say bad language that has been used against her, but then she's really doing her job, and China will also like to exert its influence in Nepal, and also because of the fact that end of the day the ruling party there is a communist party. So for obvious reasons we've seen how China has also done certain programs to teach the leaders in Nepal for leadership skill, how communist leaders should be behaving. So yes, that's been also happening, but frankly, all these countries like Nepal, Sri Lanka, they also understand the big power game between these two big powers like India and China, and they also balance it well.
Right. Okay, Ved, does the RAW chief generally go around talking to heads of states, or is this a new thing?
No, not really. So they do meet heads of state depending on what kind of a brief he is carrying, and whether the leader of that country is willing to also have a conversation. So that's how it works all the time.
Nitin Kumar, will the damage to relations with Nepal be repaired as the map row cannot be solved? The constitution has been changed. So, it came to a brink because Nepal also really took it very seriously and pushed its way through. Any sign of thawing in relations? Is this visit a sign of a thaw in relations for that matter?
See, the thawing of relationship will not depend on the RAW chief's visit, but yes, we've seen how on 15th of August, Prime Minister Oli had called Prime Minister Modi. They had a long discussion. India, again, as I stated, India has said that it will sit for the border talks at the level of the foreign secretaries when the pandemic situation subsides. Now, let's also understand from Nepal's perspective, it is a little frustrating for them to keep telling India that let's sit and discuss, because most of the boundary issue has been settled, almost 98%. And the Kalapani region is the only region where it has been unsettled because of British, the legacy issues and all of that. So even last year, after abrogation of Article 370, Nepal had stated and asked India that, let's sit and discuss, because at that time India had to issue a new political map. But at that time India said that, okay, we will be doing it soon. But we've seen that did not happen, and then the COVID pandemic started. And then after the inauguration of the new road that goes through Lipu Lake for the quickest distance to Kailash Mansarovar, that has really upset them that you could have discussed it with us. In fact, Nepal had also written a letter to China as well that do not make turn Lipu Lake into a trade route before discussing with us. At that time, China had stated that, okay, you settle the matter out with India.
Right.
So China sort of took a step back. But even then, India did not sit for discussions. And this is something that, I've been also pursuing a lot. Asking the Ministry of External Affairs. So what I get to hear from my sources is that it is an open-ended question. India will sit for the talks. But as and when, that really depends.
We don't know yet. All right, I'll take one last question. This is from Himanshu. What is the general perception of Nepal's citizens towards India? Has it been damaged, or do they still consider us a friendly neighbor?
Well, that's a very difficult question because now the young population, the young generation in Nepal, they do not really see India as this big brother without whom they will not survive. Okay, they are a much more vociferous and a much more aggressive young population who are seeking an identity for themselves. And that is exactly why, if you see, when Prime Minister Ruhi wanted to change the constitution, amend the constitution for the new map, there was unanimous support apart from one or two, which is why one can really come to the conclusion that the Nepali population, yes, it still views India as a friend, as an important neighbor, but for them China is also an important neighbor. For them US is also an important country, and they are reaching out to US like never before.
Right.
So it is a changed Nepal, and that's the reality that one has to live with.
Right. Also, to be sure, Nepal is not a monolith. It's not a homogeneous entity.
Right.
The Madhes part of Nepal is very different from the hill and valley
Absolutely.
region, and Madhesis are closer to India because the origin is closer to
Yes,
India.
with the Tewari region
That
and
is
all.
what the entire agitation and the whole dispute also was
Absolutely.
about, with India tacitly supporting the Madhesi agitation.
Exactly.
So there is a difference between the Madhesis and how they view India and how the hill and
Yes, and interestingly, even during this map row, the Madhesis initially objected, but then they also sort of gave in and understood and supported the constitutional amendment.
Right.
So this is, as I said, a very different Nepal, and India probably has to change its policy towards Nepal going forward.
Right. Well, Nayanima, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for sending in your questions and for watching Government Matters. Do enjoy your weekend and keep subscribing to our YouTube channel.